From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, welcome to a Christmas edition of SuperTalk Outdoors. Merry Christmas. This is where we celebrate the outdoors every single Monday, the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, right here at lunchtime. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you. The SuperTalk Mississippi Network is one of the most powerful networks in the United States as it runs all across Mississippi. There's no place in Mississippi you can be where you can't hear this show, and we really appreciate it. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's December the 20th, 2021. It's amazing. Where did 2021 go? It seems like we were just talking about 2020, and we need to get past it, and now here we are at the end of 2021. Truly amazing. And if you're on Facebook, you can go to our SuperTalk Mississippi, our SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page, and follow us. We put all our videos to the show right there at that SuperTalk Outdoors page. By the way, one of the videos you'll see if you go there is a video that was taken by my friend Chris Guritz over at Kings Point, right outside Vicksburg. He was up in his stand and heard this epic battle of two deer, and he sort of quietly climbed out and he walked along, closing the gap between himself and the two deer. And he captured really kind of rare ground level video of these two bucks going at it with each other. And, he did it with his iPhone. Just a great video. And we posted it at SuperTalk Outdoors. And it's, as I pointed out, it's rare footage, but people like it, and it's gone viral. So if you want to see that video, you can go to our SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page and take a look at it. You can also watch this show at SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV. If you hunt, you probably already know the Primos brand. I mean, come on now. The Primos brand and hunting kind of go hand in hand, especially if you're from Mississippi, you know that brand. We visited in the past with Will and Jimmy Primos and Brad Ferris. And as you know from their shows, Will has literally revolutionized outdoor TV. I've shared great stories with you about the Primos Truth About Hunting TV show. And I've actually referred to it as one of the first true reality TV shows. May have been the first reality TV show, because it's not about staging hunts, and we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But the entire Primos team is from Mississippi, and they have been what I have consistently referred to as ambassadors, outdoor ambassadors for the state of Mississippi. They've expanded their reach across America that goes actually beyond the Outdoors TV show. They've got a YouTube channel and a podcast called Speak the Language. I'm thrilled this morning to have two members from the Primos team here on SuperTalk Outdoors. And we're going to talk about their incredibly successful Speak the Language podcast, which already has over 1 million downloads. Welcome, Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett to SuperTalk Outdoors. How you guys doing?
Man, couldn't be better. I don't know how we ended up on the Christmas edition of the show, but I feel pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Appreciate you inviting us on. It's a good day, and it's the best time of year for us, which means the Mississippi rut's happening.
No doubt. We're going to talk about that for sure. Hey, it's great to have you guys. I know you just got finished with your podcast, but that's been a lot of fun for you too, hasn't it?
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning. It doesn't feel like it, but we're over 4 years in now, and we kind of started it on a whim, and it's been a lot of fun.
When Lake first said he wanted to start a podcast, I mean, I consider myself still in the younger generation, but I didn't even know what a podcast was. I was like, a what? What is that? It's like a radio show, but Lake started it all, and I just kind of fell into it.
Well, it's gonna be a lot of fun visiting today because you guys, you kind of started as cameramen with the Primos team, but as I talked about with Brad and Jimmy, the cameramen are part of the team, and you're as opposed to other shows where the cameramen are kind of hidden and you don't ever hear them. You guys are hunting together, and I thought about that when I was with my son this weekend. We went to Kings Point this weekend. And I didn't touch a gun, man. I had a camera with me as well, and we just hunted together and had a good time. But when you're in that kind of team approach, you're literally both watching and looking, and you probably capture or at least see deer that you probably would not otherwise see if you weren't hunting together. But you've gone on to do interesting things. You've both gotten into the real estate business. I've enjoyed watching on Instagram your your weight loss, efforts, and the work that you've done to get more fit. Which I think, when you go out into somewhere like New Mexico and go hunt for elk, you learn pretty quickly. You better be in shape, don't you, Jordan?
Man, it helps a lot. I can say that. I used to always think, well, I'll be all right. It ain't but a week out there. But after I worked hard and got it done, it's a lot more enjoyable now.
So there's a lot to talk about. So why don't we start with this, Jordan? What does the Primos brand mean to you?
Man, it growing up, just honestly, just like every other little redneck kid in Mississippi, we watched Primos, and growing up, I always dreamed about being a Brad, hunting with Brad Ferris or Will or Jimmy, and mostly Brad. He's probably the guy I looked up to the most because there were some connections there from some of his friends and stuff that I knew. I felt like I knew him more than I did Will because of the connections. I never met Brad, but I felt like I kind of knew him more just because of the friendships that he had with some of my friends, and just watching that as a kid, I always dreamed about doing that, and I would reenact it when I would go hunting. I was like, yep, Brad's over here. I would have the bow vest and everything. I'd want everything they had, and just watching that growing up, it was just something I always wanted to do and never expected I would do it, but I'm blessed and super thankful that I'm here.
Yeah. So Lake, tell me about what it means to you, buddy.
I think a lot of what Jordan said, I could probably echo a lot of that. And it's funny when you hear stories that similar. And I say that just because I've had conversations with other guys that grew up watching Primos Truth videos, VHSs, and then DVDs, and then the show, but the impact it had on growing up watching it so much. I told Will one time when we were hunting together, I said I took it as far as when I was deer hunting, I would memorize like the exact cadences that I'd hear them blow into a grunt call, and I would try to mimic that when I was hunting. And even as far as when I shot my first turkey, I was with a friend of mine named Keith Polk, and he was videoing it on a little home handy camera, and I'd watched this Primos Truth video where Brad had killed a turkey in Mississippi, and he holds up the spurs and he says, man, he's got some good carrying handles. So in the video, my young little 12-year-old self holding up that turkey, I'm like, he's got some nice carrying handles. I wanted to be Brad Ferris, so I can't, it's hard for me if I tried to put into words how much Primos meant to me, we'd be here for days. You know
what's interesting, guys, when you spend time with Will, and I've had the pleasure of spending some time with him, and then you talk to Jimmy, Brad. I mean, these guys are all humble, and I don't think they fully comprehend how far-reaching they touch hunters all over America. Now, Jimmy talked about going through a airport in New Mexico or going to the Kroger's in Madison, and people coming up to him and mentioning something. I'm sure you guys have faced that as well. But how it impacted you and your hunting now that you're actually part of the team. It's all been part of that influence of so many hunters, of all demographics, of all races. Anybody who enjoys the outdoors has been touched by truth about hunting. They don't fully appreciate how significant that is, do they, Jordan?
Man, I 100% agree with that. Just like when you're in camp with Brad and Jimmy and Will now, it's just like they're just your buddies you're in camp with now. But when you go to an NWTF show or something like that, you're like, boy, these folks show no. I mean, they wanna shake Will and Jimmy and Brad's hand. They really look up to these guys, And when you're around them, we get so just, I guess, caught up and just doing what we do for a living, and we just look at them as for one, co-workers, and two, some of our best friends, and we just don't realize it till you get out in the public eye and you see that, and you're like, okay, they really made an impact here.
So you guys, you all went to New Mexico and had a great trip, actually, and then after that, Lake, you had the opportunity to go with just Will on to he got a tag somewhere else. Y'all went on the road. when you're with him alone like that during that stretch of time, I mean, the way he talked about you, actually, you probably heard him, but the way he talked about you was you learn a lot about somebody, the character of somebody when you spend, I don't know, 5 or 6 days with them, the way that you guys spent time together. But he was incredibly complimentary of you. And, he said, called you just a really fine man. Let's do this, actually. We're coming to the end of this segment together. When we come out on the other end, I want to know what it was like to be one-on-one with Will for those number of days. And when you stop to get gas somewhere, did people know who Will was and so on. We're going to continue. I really appreciate you joining us on this special Christmas edition of SuperTalk Outdoors here on the SuperTalk Network. We'll be back with Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett when we come back on the other side.
I said 3 Mississippi to this land called home. I'll breathe more.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Foundation Studio right here on Back Bay, Biloxi. By the way, the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is an amazing organization composed of volunteer leaders from across this state. And while they support the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks very significantly, they also do other things involving conservation and doing the kind of things I would say is preserving our outdoor legacy here in Mississippi. We're so fortunate to be associated with the foundation and glad to have them as a sponsor of Super Talk Outdoors. I'm thrilled today to be joined by members of the Primos team, Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett. And when we went to break, we were talking about sort of, what made them want to get onto the Primos team and how they looked up to it, and as kids, how they enjoyed the show, as so many of us did, and still do, I might add. But Lake, you had the opportunity to travel alone with Will. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. At this point, I've been able to do a couple different one-on-one hunting trips with Will. And the first time that I did something like that, the first time I got to spend any real time with Will, it was strange because without even realizing it, pretty much being a hero of mine growing up, it's like I almost only knew him as like a persona that I looked up to. Whereas getting to spend time with him and getting to know him as a person, it's been so incredibly important to me. He's been so impactful as a friend, as a mentor, as a teacher. And so that trip in Arizona, it was so much fun because you get to know him as a person, and Jordan can tell you this, whether it's especially seen to me, I think, when I go elk hunting or turkey hunting with him, because you're moving more, you're experiencing the country, and you learn that Will loves elk hunting. That doesn't mean he just loves chasing bugle and elk. He loves all of it. Everything that encapsulates it, the country, the smells, the sounds, the birds. Jordan, you get laughing. Like sometimes we'll be hunting and we'll be like, oh, and you're, as a cameraman, I'm thinking, oh, bull elk, something like that. And it could be a bird that big that lands on a branch. He's just so eccentric about everything that is the outdoors. And that's just him. He does that when the camera's on, when the camera's off. And it's taught me so much, as far as just really appreciating all of it and taking it all in. And to your point, I think Will knows to some degree how important he is and how impactful he has been. I just think he chooses to not think about it. He chooses to just be himself, and that's part of what makes him special of a person as he is. I mean, I know he's just that kind of a guy. One short story, and I know I've probably taken this longer than you intended to. I remember one time we were elk hunting in New Mexico. This has been a few years ago, but he had shot an elk, and I remember what we had decided to do was to drive the Polaris Ranger to a certain point as close to when we were going to pack him out from there. And Jordan and Troy went to go get the Ranger. Will and I stayed to kind of start cutting the elk up, and it got dark and we were through. And it ended up, we just laid down in the grass because we were tired. We've been out all day. And at some point, Will and I's relationship had normalized a little bit. Like at some part of me, he had become just a friend. But somewhere in the back recesses of my mind, he's still the person that he was to me when I was a 12-year-old watching his videos. And so this thought just hits me as like I'm standing there laying in the grass looking up at the New Mexico stars with Will, and he's just talking about how great the hunt was. I'm like, man, if I could just go and tell little 12-year-old me that this would happen someday, it's one of those things you're like, you know what, everything does kind of turn out okay.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
you know what though? That inspires to hear that though. That inspires young people all around the world, really, who love outdoors and who are listening to this conversation. That if you have a passion for something and you set your mind to it, you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish in your life. And maybe we'll come back to that in just a second. But I want to add something. What's interesting about Will and what I've learned about him is everything that you said, that at the foundation, there's a really good man, and he's incredibly thankful to God that he's got this opportunity, and he lives his life that way. He is a man who lives by example. But I have a friend of mine. His name is Reed Geis. He lives here on the coast. For people who know him, they know what I'm about to say. But Reed is a guy that my son Jordan, he fishes with us a lot, and just a great guy. He fly fishes around the world. But my son Jordan says of Reed that he has a low threshold for amazement. Some people, they see something, oh, that's pretty, and then the next time they see it, they don't even really notice it. Some people, they see something that's beautiful, and the next time they see it, it's even more beautiful. And the next time they see it, it's even more, because they're appreciating the moment. They're consumed in the moment. And they see the smallest things in life, and they're not just love it, but they're amazed by it. That describes Will, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jordan, were you gonna add something? I saw you shaking your head while Lake was talking.
Oh, I was just, man, I've been fortunate to go on a bunch of solo turkey hunts with Will. We'll take off. I go to his house. We'll meet up and go turkey hunting for a morning or whatever here locally. And just thinking about the times we've turkey hunted, even if we're not being successful for us getting on turkeys or anything, but just walking through the woods with that guy and learning what the knowledge that he takes in and appreciates about our landscape here in Mississippi is just, he'll take 5 minutes and examine a big white oak tree, talking about how old he thinks it is and this kind of thing.
And he'll get so excited about it.
Yeah, it has made me appreciate our outdoors more by hunting with him.
Yeah, people will say of him that he didn't leave anything on the table. And the thing about it is, he's up in age now. He still gets around pretty darn good, doesn't he?
Look, he's 69 years old, and where we hunted, I fell into the trap of thinking that when a lot of folks, when they think of Arizona, they think of flat desert type country. We were in Unit 1, close to like Eager, Arizona, the White Mountains. It was rugged country, aspen groves, steep mountains, and it was impressive, truly. Not it what you wouldn't look at Will and go, man, for a 69-year-old man, he gets around quick. You just look at him, it's like, man, that guy can move. Like it was impressive, truly.
Hey, look, you guys hunted on the river for a good long time, and I had the opportunity this past weekend, as I mentioned, to go to Kings Point and fish with my friends Chris Gurris and Bo Mandel. I say fish, I meant hunt, of course. I got fishing on the brain. But anyway, the point is that the hunting along the river is just incredible. But of course, as we all know, there's been some issues with floods over the last few years, and more recently, you guys are on the bluffs of the Delta in a place called Kudzu Bluff. Has that been a tough transition for you guys?
You take that one.
I wouldn't say a tough transition, but it's taken a lot of transition getting used to a different way of hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
The area is good. It's known for, good deer hunting and that kind of thing. It's a highly pressured area for that one thing. A lot of deer hunters up in that area, and it's taken some getting used to far as like how to hunt the landscape because it's such a big change.
Yeah.
And, we actually had to pay attention to wind currents now, thermals and that sort of thing. And this, me and Jimmy were hunting last week in a spot, and the wind was great as long as it was, blowing over 3-4 miles an hour. But as the afternoon fell, the wind currents died, so you started having those thermals play in. And we were up on a hill looking down in a food plot, and I could feel the currents like shifting down the hill, pulling downhill, just like we do elk hunting. You have to pay attention to that now.
Yeah.
And, it can make or break a hunt paying attention to those thermals.
Yeah, at our places, we have 500 in the hills, 500 in the Delta, and the main camp that are connected. So we We have hills hunting just like you guys described. In fact, we have one of our stands is called Mount Everest. You can probably understand that. We've got one called Grand Canyon, just like you guys have one called Grand Canyon. But when we say Grand Canyon, we mean Grand Canyon. I mean, when we tell somebody if you shoot a deer here, do not move. Wait for us to get there, because you could get off the beaten path and fall 100 feet. I mean, it's dangerous, isn't it, Lake?
Yeah, it took me. I'm more used to it now, being year 2. But the first year we were there, we were like, holy smokes, look at that drop. I mean, there's a spot. I mean, the spot where Brad shot that deer that we referred to as the Grand Canyon, that's not the steepest spot on that little stretch of woods. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. There's spots, like if I took someone out there for the first time, I'd be like, don't walk close to over there. If you fall, you're getting hurt, It's crazy.
It's so special though. You're right. It's just different. The deer hunting's great. So if you've got pressure, you got to learn how to deal with that. You, as you pointed out, Jordan, you got to think about the thermals more. Wind really matters big time when you're in the hills, and whether it's morning or afternoon, your thermals are going to do different, etc. Hey, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett, and we're just going to talk about hunting in Mississippi and just continue the conversation. We'll see you back after this break.
Mississippi, where a mockingbird sings out on the sunset in a Delta dawn.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I'm joined today on a special Christmas edition. Merry Christmas to you, of SuperTalk Outdoors by Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett from the Primos team. Listen, we were talking about hunting at your new place. You're doing the show there. Is doing the show there different than what you experienced in the Delta, or is it basically the same kind of deal?
It's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's different. I think the biggest different part is it's a lot closer to our homes, so we can kind of pick and choose when to go hunting now, rather than at Cottonmouth. We were over there, 5 days a week for 4 months pretty much, and now it's we can kind of pick and choose when we go, which makes it easier on our home life, but at the same time, sometimes we're missing out too,
Yeah.
So I know the last month we made it an effort to be up there 4 or 5 days a week for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Lake?
Just the Cottonmouth, we had such a rhythm because we were there for so long. And so changing locations that drastically, not in a bad way, it was just a drastic change, very, very, very different. And every different location, like George said, different, close, different distance from home, completely different hunting, different deer, everything. And so it's just last year, the first year, it was a whole lot of almost like learning to walk again, which made interesting television. So, and the improvements from year 1 to year 2 have been very encouraging, but different, not bad, but different.
Well, I totally, like you and I talked about this a little bit when you were on my show, Coastie on the Coast, but it is, when you go to a new place, you got to learn it, and it may take 2 or 3 years. You got to figure out what the deer patterns are. What's the impact of your neighbors having, and what should the standards be, and where should we have food plots? Where do we need to put stands up? You can put a stand up over there, and it probably needed to be about 100 yards over there, and it made all the difference in the world. But see, at Cottonmouth, y'all figured all that out. I mean, it was you literally had it down to a computer science, didn't you?
It felt like that, and I don't think I was as appreciative of how much we had learned at Cottonmouth and hunting there so consistently until we moved. I didn't realize just how valuable that knowledge we all had and built was. But we can do a similar thing at Kudzu. It's just going to take time.
Yeah, but you said it. You said it, and this, I'll come to you, Jordan, on this, but those years of learning at Cottonmouth, and then taking that institutional knowledge and bringing it to Kudzu, it changes the way you observe things. It changes how you think about where a food plot ought to be. It changes how you ought to get to a stand. I mean, there's so much knowledge you gained. It really helped you lay this thing out faster in a way that helps you be successful, didn't it?
I'd say so. I mean, just kind of, I guess, learning how deer move and that kind of thing. Hunting Cottonmouth so long, you kind of, there's some things that interchange, like far as like how to set up on a food plot, where we think our predominant wind is, where we think the deer are going to access it from, just that kind of thing. They overlay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times, like I was talking about earlier with the wind directions and that kind of thing, you realize real quick, well, where we've got to stand at will never work because the wind's hitting some ridge behind you and swirling around, that sort of thing. And, we've actually got spots now we hardly ever go to just for that reason. They're good spots, but they're hard to hunt, and there's some things that overlap as far as learning how deer move and the time of year. And that's one thing we were expecting last year, the last 2 weeks of December to be on fire. When we get up there right after Thanksgiving and deer are running around chasing like crazy, we're like, oh Lord, we ain't ready for an early rut.
Yeah. We got so taken off guard by that. So taken off guard.
We're only 60, 70 miles as a crow flies difference, and only pretty much dead east. And it's 2 weeks difference in a rut. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing is at Cottonmouth, the way Cottonmouth was, we had, I couldn't say we had full control, but we had so much more control on how much hunting pressure was put on those deer. Whereas here, we don't have much say in all and how much hunting pressure gets put on them. We can do our part, but our part is not as big of a part as it was at Cottonmouth. I mean, those deer are getting pressured.
They get nocturnal real fast on us up there. So it's just kind of waiting on the good weather. The weather gets them on their feet a lot more, I think, than it did affected them at Cottonmouth. Like these deer up here are very weather dependent. When it's hot and nasty, they don't move much at all. And when it comes a cold front, it's going to be good. So that's kind of what we're learning right now.
Yeah, the stages of rut are going to be different. The post rut's going to be more important to you guys there for sure. Hey, so Jordan and Lake, one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the show is you guys have been on you went on a journey to get healthier, and you've actually become a certified fitness consultant or whatever, Jordan. Tell me about what motivated you, man.
Honestly, I knew it was something I needed to do for a long time, and honestly, Brad and Will both pushed me I needed to get healthier. Honestly, I was overweight, and it affected what I did, especially during elk season. I didn't realize it. It was just them trying to help me, but I had excuses in my mind for a long time why I couldn't do it and this, that, and the other. And finally, I just said, I got to do something. And that's what happened. I wouldn't say it's been technically that easy, but it's something I'm glad I did.
But what's interesting about what you've done is you put your journey out there for people to follow you on social media. So by doing that, you put pressure on yourself to stay the course.
Yeah.
And you get that, don't you?
It helped me stay accountable for sure. That's a factor of it. But
what motivated you, Lake?
Honestly, Facebook throws you memories, stuff that happened. And I saw a picture of myself from it had been 4 or 5 years ago now. And it was when I was in the gym a lot and making a lot healthier eating choices. And that picture popped up and I was like, oh, I don't look like that anymore. Something's got to fit in. Same kind of deal. It was like, I love elk hunting a whole lot. And elk hunting is a very physically demanding type of hunting. And, and then getting motivated by people like Will moving around the way that he does. I'm like, if I don't take care of myself now, honestly, I wasn't seeing too much an issue now as my performance out there, but it was more of like a playing the long game sort of thing. It's like, if I don't do this now, then I have a much shorter shelf life on how much I can do this out west hunting stuff.
So I know why you both did it, and it was really so that you could just enjoy what you do more, be more fulfilled in what you're doing, because you admit that you probably needed to lose a few pounds. But Jordan, did you realize when you sat on that course that it would impact other people, that your journey? I mean, everyone has challenges in their lives. Everyone's, they'll eat because they find enjoyment in that. Before they know it, 3 or 4 weeks has gone by and they've, gained 10 or 15 pounds. Everybody goes through that. But what you're doing is sort of trying to lead by example to help people see that there's a way to sort of change things so that you can maintain and enjoy it. and that people are being influenced by that. Are you aware of how you're influencing people?
Somewhat now, but I had no idea it would turn into this. I had no idea that it would affect so many people.
Yeah, it's good to know that that's having that impact, isn't it?
It is. It makes you feel good, especially when somebody calls you and tells you you helped them. So that's been a good
thing. That's really good. So coming to your podcast, you guys just got finished with your podcast just a few minutes ago. And I listened, and I really love the rhythm of the show. Two guys getting together and talking from time to time. You have guests on. I think actually, I mentioned to you this morning, one of the things I've noticed is that you don't generally get involved in issues, particularly as it relates to Mississippi, because your podcast is speaking to people certainly all over the country, maybe even beyond that. But on the McIntyre scatter issue at Malmaison, that hit a nerve. And I just want to say, first of all, I really enjoyed the way you talked about it. I mean, you just talked about it from the average guy, why this is important, and that, this whole issue. So real quick, like, summarize what that issue was.
Yeah. So the McIntyre scatters lays, the way that it lays, it's both in public land and in private land. And without going into too much detail, there had been through request from people who hunted and utilized the private land that butted up next to it, where it touched Malmaison WMA, which is where it goes into the McIntyre scatters on that part, requested that there be a rule change to where there would basically be 100-yard buffer down some of the western border of Malmaison.
Yeah. So yeah, there'd been some conflict there, and instead of splitting like 50 yards on one side and 50 on the other, they did 100 all on the public side. Right. And that kind of hit a nerve with you guys. When we come back, we'll continue just a quick conversation about that. But I like the way you approached it, and we'll also talk about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that's going to get another opportunity to get passed in the Mississippi Legislature. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Lake Pickle.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I have Lake Pickle and my friend Jordan Blissett from the Primos team. And when we went to break, we were just beginning to talk about the McIntyre scatters, which has been described as a 500-acre plus area of the Malmaison WMA, really the soul of the WMA for waterfowl. And it's mostly, obviously, duck hunting area. And it put the buffer zone only on the public side. And essentially what I heard you guys saying, Jordan, was that you were concerned about it because not only did they take it from the public side, which is obviously public land and forbidden people from going there, but that you're worried about the precedents that would set, and that other people would want to have similar things. I think actually that the feedback that they're getting at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, that the commission is realizing they've got to go back and take another look at this. But that's what you were saying, right, Jordan?
That's right. I mean, the biggest thing we had concerns with it was what could happen in the future if this was a door that was let open,
Yeah.
And as a private landowner and a public land hunter, I utilize both of them every year. It's just something, me personally, I don't want to see happen. Just let it be a white and black line there, and you don't cross this side and I won't cross that side, whatever,
That's what a property line is all about. I think there had been a lot of legal maneuvering, and this has been going on for a long time. We're trying to resolve that because the judge was not clear in his particular order about that, and so the commission had to step in and deal with it. But hopefully they listened on that issue. Another issue that Will has been really, really passionate about is the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that passed the House 117-2. Didn't make it through the Senate, but essentially it would create a trust fund that would enable us to go get a lot of federal dollars. And we're only one or two states in the Southeast that doesn't have that. In order for us to maintain our status as the capital of the outdoors in the United States, Mississippi is that good. We've got to do something like this. So you guys are beginning to get onto that issue as well, aren't you? Jordan?
Yeah, I've researched into it a little bit. I've heard Will talk about it a lot. It's in my mind, it makes perfect sense in the world to have something like that to help I mean, every dollar that we can have to help our wildlife succeed, especially turkeys in my mind, like that's where everything in my mind revolves around, is helping wild turkeys out, and ducks as well, and upland birds. There's all need some help in our state. And I mean, we have excellent hunting now, but it could be better.
Lake, what would you add to that?
Like you said, I was actually getting educated on this issue. I think I texted you when I was in Arizona, because I knew this was going to come up. And I had been rolling around the idea. Jordan and I talked about it. I was like, we need to start using this podcast platform that we have, especially with this going on in our state. And one of the things that stuck out to me was, one, like you said, that we're one of the few Southeast states left that doesn't have a fund like this. That's upsetting to me. I don't want us following behind. If we can look at these other states and see what success they're having with it, then it kind of seems like a no-brainer. And then especially, like, I think Georgia's one of the states that was highlighted and how much they've been able to do. And so it's something that we can talk about more, but I think it's something that needs to happen.
Georgia took a $20 million state investment and leveraged it to almost $100 million in conservation. The thing about it is, not having that fund, we fall further and further behind. And we've really just got to do it. It's a transformational bill. It's something we need to get done. I think there's a lot of maneuvering going on behind the scenes to try to reach a compromise, and hopefully they can do that this year. The way I talk about it, I think this is the way you guys approach it as well. The SuperTalk Outdoors is really about enjoying the outdoors. We're going to talk about hunting and fishing and all the personalities involved in it. And from time to time, we're going to talk about an issue and tell you why what happens in Jackson and Washington is important to the average outdoorsman. And we're not going to ponder it, but when they do come up, we're going to mention it and make sure you're just aware of it. And those are two issues that have arisen recently. There'll be others, but most of the other time, we're just going to have good conversations about enjoying the outdoors. That's sort of the way you're approaching your podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, likewise. It's like we're not going to avoid those topics, but we're not going to seek out, current events just to stir controversy. But if something like that important comes up, then we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice, and what we say we love also a disservice by not bringing it up. So
we are lucky to live here, aren't we, Jordan?
We absolutely are. And as conservationists, that all starts by raising money and that kind of thing, and helping the laws that are passed benefit the wildlife first and the people that use it, so it all works as one. And I think that's where we should keep our minds at.
Well, you guys have been all over the United States, and in some cases actually, some places around the world. But Lake, when I say this is the capital of the outdoors in the United States, we're lucky, with the saltwater fishing off our coast and the hunting and other outdoor activities. This is a special place, isn't it, my friend?
It truly is. It truly, truly is special to me, special to you, special to this country as far as what this has to offer.
Hey, listen, one final note. I had a friend of mine who may come on the show and talk about this that had a gun go off while they were unloading it the other day. And it went through 2 walls, hit a safe, and ricocheted and hit a friend in the thigh. He's okay. But it's just a reminder that this time of year, people get complacent. Make sure your straps on your stands are new and tight and safe. Make sure you wear a harness. Make sure your gun is unloaded when you stop hunting. You can't be safer. You cannot be safer. You have to stay on your guard. Don't get complacent. Jordan and Lake, God bless you guys, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
You bet. See you later.
Carry on.